This, of course, is an earthworm, and typically when you dissect it, most of the body, maybe 75% of the body below what's called the clitellum, which kind of looks like a Band-Aid, that if you had two earthworms that wanted to reproduce, this clitellum releases mucus, they stick together and they exchange sperm, and so they basically cross-fertilize each other. But below that clitellum, most of what you see here, about as much as 75% of the length of the body, is actually intestines. Now, what typically we do is that we try to cut just below the clitellum, and then either using a scalpel or scissors, cut it all the way to the top, kind of splay it open like that, and pin it. And we can find some pins in here in a minute, and then we can see what that looks like.
So you said they exchange sperm. Does that mean that they're hermaphroditic?
Mm-hmm. They are hermaphroditic. That is correct. Let's see. Something here.
That ought to be plenty.
Mm-hmm. With these.
You need me to zoom in?
Well, when I opened this up, a lot of black gunk came out, which leads me to believe that the preserving of this particular one wasn't very good. I'm going to open it up and see. I may have to do another one.
Okay.
But we can try it. I'm going to try to pin it and see if there's anything here we can look at. Whoops. Maybe it'll be okay. Yeah, ye have little faith. It's looking better than I thought it would.
Yeah.
Let me kick this up. And you have to be a little bit patient with this because it's small and you're trying to expose some of the organs without doing too much damage to them. And interestingly enough, when I cut that open, I severed part of the intestine, and you saw that black material, which is a combination of digestive material, soil particles. Earthworms are actually great for aerating soil because as they bore through and feed upon organic matter, they help with decomposition, eating the dead material, but they also, as they crawl through the soil, they create pores that can collect oxygen so that the earthworms can breathe. But they also aerate the soil for other types of organisms that's helpful as well.
Let's see if I can zoom in some more.
Now, one thing I'm going to note, if you look on the outside, you can actually see the individual segments. And an earthworm has something on the order of over 100 segments. And each of those segments, and you might be able to see it here, if we kind of pull this apart a little bit, you can see what look like little lines here, and those lines are called septa, and they're actually and it may be hard, hopefully you can see it on the screen, Inside here, these little lines represent the septa, or the barriers that around each segment. So if you have over 100 segments, obviously each segment would have one of these septa, or dividers, on either side. Now I was going to point to something because it's pretty visible. That's excellent, because look, you can see the septa here.
Yeah.
See there? And those are the little dividers between each of the 100 segments that they have. Now, if I point to some things here, obviously from here on down is all intestine. And they really do need that much intestine because the type of organic matter they're trying to break down and digest is very resistant to digestion. Right. A lot of it's cellulose, right, which is difficult to digest. And so having this long of an intestine gives them the ability to slowly but surely break that down and be able to fully digest it. And again, as they break down that organic matter, then it becomes available to other organisms in a somewhat more reduced or digested form that they can be able to utilize. Now I'm going to lean over here a little bit. All this is intestine. This organ here is very thick-walled. If you touch it, it's really hard to the touch. This is actually the gizzard. Can everybody see right there? Oh. That's the gizzard. Now, chickens have gizzards, and if you ever watched a chicken in a farm field, they'll eat stones because they don't have teeth. And the stones get into the gizzard, and the gizzard has very thick muscular walls, and as the muscles in the gizzard contract, in the earthworm, of course, they have sand particles that get ground together to grind up the food. Like
a stone mill.
Like a stone mill, that's exactly right. And the chicken, of course, they use pebbles or small stones. And again, as the muscular walls of their gizzard contract, then it basically the pebbles or stones grind up the food. Okay, again, they don't have teeth, so they can't use typical mastication to be able to do that. So again, the gizzard is a thick-walled muscular structure. As sand moves into it, that they ingest along with other food particles, the contractions of the muscle force those sand particles together and grind up the food. Here's the crop, the darker structure just in front of it, and that basically is a collection chamber for food before it goes into the gizzard. Sometimes people collectively call that the stomach, but it's not like an official designation. Now this very large white pouch here is actually a seminal vesicle that produces sperm. Okay. And I don't know if you can see them on the side, you can see some smaller ones, like this one. Yeah. They're a little bit smaller. They're usually along the edges. I think there's one right there too. Those are seminal receptacles, and basically they receive sperm. Okay. So when the two earthworms attach together at the clitellum, that external structure, and stick together via mucus, each one of them is producing sperm in its seminal vesicle, and each one of them then receives sperm from the other one via the seminal receptacle. The vesicles are quite a bit larger than the receptacles.
Which makes sense.
Now in this,
it's got to create the sperm in the vesicle, right?
Yep. It's hard to see, but here there's like a little black strip on either side, and those are parts of those aortic arches. I can see part of one here too. And literally the arches, basically they arch over the esophagus, or the food tube. So from this one you can actually see here part of the esophagus, and then there's a little dark spot there that here and here are bits of the aortic arches that have been cut. And again, they basically arch over the esophagus. I'm trying to find one that's intact. There's part of one, but I don't see any clear ones. Sometimes this is luck of the draw, as if you get a real pronounced one. Now up here is the pharynx, or the muscular throat, and typically the brain is difficult to find, but they have what's called a cerebral ganglion, or a brain.
Okay. Now how small or how large would that be?
It'd be very small. It would be hard to even see, and usually when you look at it, it kind of looks like a spiral. I don't know if I can
expect. Just like a little knob of tissue?
Yeah, a little knob of tissue, basically. It may not show up on this one. I'm going to look and try to splay it open a little bit. Maybe some of this, see that little patch there? That might be part of it there towards the end of the earthworm.
Okay.
See a little patch?
Yeah.